Hi, everyone. We'll get started in a moment, just letting the Zoom room fill in. Welcome, everyone. All right, pretty soon we'll get started, just letting the Zoom room fill in. Welcome, everyone, as you join us. All right, let's get started. Good evening and welcome to PNP Live. My name is Margaret Orto and I'm the events coordinator in the Children and Teens Department of Politics and Prose. Thank you for joining us this evening and tuning into this format as we continue to bring authors and new books to you. I am thrilled to welcome our guests this evening, Francisco X. Stork and Meg Medina. They're here to celebrate the publication of their latest works, On the Hook and Merci Suarez Can't Dance. Tonight, you can click the link we will drop in the chat to get your own copies of each author's books. We have signed book plates from both authors while supplies last. And tonight also, if you have a question for our guests, you can click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and add one there. At the end of the chat, our guests will have time to answer some of your questions. You can also vote on questions you like and want answered. As always, please remember that this is a creative, safe space, and we ask that folks be respectful of one another in the questions and comments. Now, on to introductions. Francisco X. Stork is the award-winning author of Marcello in the Real World, The Last Summer of the Death Warriors, The Memory of Light, and Disappeared. Illegal, the sequel to Disappeared, received In the Margins Book Award and the 2020 Best Young Adult Book from the Texas Institute of Letters. He lives near Boston with his wife. In conversation with Francisco this evening is Meg Medina. Meg Medina won the 2019 Newbery Medal for Merci Suarez Changes His Gears. Her other works include the picture books Mango, Abuela and Me, and Tia Isa Wants a Car, and the YA novels Burn, Baby Burn, The Girl Who Could Silence the Wind, and the Pura Belpre author award-winning Yake Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass. Her most recent book is Merci Suarez Can't Dance. She lives in Richmond, Virginia with her family. And now I think that the person who was supposed to officially be hosting tonight is back. Let's see, there she is. Ellie, why don't you just go ahead? I'll take myself off and you go ahead and just, if you would set up, the opening questions for Francisco and Meg, and then they can take it away. All right, bye everyone.
Again, folks, I'm so sorry about that internet blip. It's good to see you all again. Good to see both of you. So before you take it into what is going to be an amazing conversation, I can set us up with a couple questions, or a question with multiple parts. Set up your latest books for us and talk about the inspiration behind them, if that is cool with you. And I am so excited to hear about this. See you soon.
Thank you, Ellie. Well, first of all, I want to say happy book birthday, Francisco. That's terrific. Today is the actual day, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, so then in honor of that, and also so that I don't have to sing happy birthday and torture everybody, tell us about On the Hook.
Well, On the Hook is first of all, thank you very much to Politics and Prose for having us here, and thank you, Meg, for joining me. I'm so honored, and also I want to thank the friends that came, all the people that I cajoled and bribed and threatened. I promise you that you're off the hook, promotionally speaking, after this. So On the Hook is really is my 9th novel. And it's a story of Hector Cruz. He's a second year in high school, and he's a very smart young man. He's captain of his chess team, and he's set on being an engineer. And his biggest goal is to get his family out of the projects, the subsidized housing projects in El Paso, where he lives. because it's kind of a dangerous setting, and so he's very keen on remaining off the radar of the drug dealers and so forth in the environment that surrounds him. Unfortunately, he's not really able to do that, and he's noticed by Joey, who is the brother of the local drug dealer, who threatens his life. And then, a series of kind of violent events ensue, and Hector, who is a very reserved and kind of a withdrawn boy, is forced to kind of take on a new identity of revenge. And both Joey and Hector end up in a reform school in San Antonio, where they kind of have to work out their destiny together and figure out whether they're going to kill each other or find a way to live.
That sounds very much like family life in some way, right? But figuring out how we're going to live together without, especially during the COVID time. I immensely enjoyed that novel. And before I have lots of questions for you about it, but I do want to just frame what I'm coming to the table with today, which is Merci Suarez Can't Dance. And that is a middle grade novel that follows, it's the sequel to Merci Suarez Changes Gears. So Mercy's in the 7th grade, and we revisit the Suarez family living still in South Florida. And I think if the first novel was mostly about changes in the family with Lolo's illness and her new experience at Seaward Pines Academy, the second novel is really about Merci awakening to this notion of love in all its forms. The love that she sees with her grandparents, with her own parents, that sort of fake love, those crushes that we have on make-believe people, or maybe sometimes real people, and they don't know we like them. And I think the biggest exploration was love for herself, how we forgive ourselves, how we forgive other people, all through the lens of 7th grade. So it's as with the first novel, I think it has lots of funny moments, I hope, moments that feel really relatable to kids and make them laugh. And then very poignant moments, because, life doesn't stop. The hard things don't stop for anybody. And Mercy's finding that out too. So it's been very fun to come to the table with Merci and see fans who loved her and her family, have a new installment. But, I was thinking so much about On the Hook, because one of the things that intrigued me is this notion of revisiting a previously accomplished work. So I think I read in your book that this novel is sort of a redo for you, like a revisiting of a novel that already existed. So I'm really curious about that, because Francisco, I have to tell you, I should tell you, I'm driving around Richmond or anywhere else thinking, why didn't I end this novel this way? Or, oh, I could have solved it this other way. Or somebody says something about the novel and it pinches me the wrong way, it makes me a little salty. And I'm thinking, usually years later, they could have a point. I could have done this, that, or the other thing. So I'm wondering, what was the original book? Why are you revisiting it in On the Hook? It feels so fresh and new. I mean,
Yeah.
give us the scoop on that.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that Merci Suarez Can't Dance is just. I'm always amazed how I'm 68 years old and I'm kind of captivated for 300 pages following this 7th grader around. There's some magic that happens when I read about her, and I want to ask you a little bit more about it. Hopefully, hopefully I have some poignant questions for you, and I want you to divulge your secrets to us.
Okay.
Yeah,
Will do.
You're right. I think that On the Hook was it's a recreation of a novel that I wrote in 2006. And it's not really a revision. I say it's like taking, it's if you were taking the characters of Downtown Abbey and you created a new adventure and new stories and so forth, and even changed some of the characters. I figured that the one of the things that happened when after I wrote Off the Hook is a couple of years after that. There was a juvenile detention center outside of Minneapolis that was reading the book. The students were reading the book, and I went to talk to them. And
You
when I
mean the
left,
original book?
the original book, Behind the
The
Eye,
original
that's
one.
called, yeah.
Okay, Behind You.
So when I left there, I had the sense that I hadn't really touched those young men. That the character, they had not really identified with the anger. Their anger was not reflected in the anger of the characters, or in the obsession with revenge. And I felt like I was very proud of the book. I felt that it was the best book that I could have written at the time. And it's like you love all your children, no matter what. Your books are your children. But there was something about it that maybe I just wasn't, I hadn't acquired quite the skills or the wisdom to write the book that it could have been. And so, many years later, after many tries, I was able to, thanks to Scholastic and editors like Cheryl Klein and Arthur Levine and Emily Seife and David Levitan, I was able to work on this book and create kind of a new story with characters that were more complex. But one of the things that helped was really that I had written 6 books in the meantime, and I had learned so you learn so many things each time you write, and I think that
Very true.
that to write a book that would capture the attention of young men who are maybe not the greatest readers, or not the most enthusiastic readers, just requires kind of a balance of character development and action, that it just takes some time to kind of get that, and I think that because of the books that I wrote, and especially the last 2 books, which are more like thrillers, I get a little bit more of a knack on this ability to create that balance of interiority and agency, which is, I think, what I'm hoping will keep a young reader reading throughout the book.
Yeah, I agree with you about each book that you write teaches you. It's such a myth also, though, that, I do think that every book moves you, just sort of amplifies your toolbox. At least it feels that way for me. I'll get to a desperate place in a manuscript and I can say to myself, at least, I've been here before. I have some knowledge of how to solve this, or how to fix this, how to make it stronger. But it's not a straight line, right? Like, there's no guarantee that, my someday, let's say I write 20 books someday, that the 20th is going to be better than the 4th. And that feels frustrating to me. Like, I wish it were always, moving in one direction, but it really, every book is its own universe. But I feel like I've learned a lot from each book. And I've had the same feeling. Like, my very first novel is no longer in print. It came out, it had some decent reviews, but it was very quiet. It was published originally by Henry Holt. It was called Milagros, Girl from Away. And I also felt like it was the best book that I could write at the time. And I was so excited and so proud of it. But over the years, I wish I had done some things in it differently.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wish I could go back and rewrite it and revisit it. So maybe you might be giving me some impulse to someday do that again, to revisit that novel. It was sort of in magical realism, which was my first. I love that style.
Yeah.
And now I write so much in contemporary. Do you find that your voice has changed a lot from like 2006 to now? Have you tried different voices? Like, how have you developed, you think, over time?
I feel more comfortable writing in the third person now, and I then in some of the first person books that I've written, like Marcelo, for example, which was first person, present tense, and there was that book had that it was probably the only way that book could be, given who Marcelo was and what he was thinking and so forth. But over time, I find myself that I need to kind of challenge myself a little bit by becoming more and more both an author who is able to stay in the mind of the character, but also kind of distant enough to have some kind of irony and some perspective, you know, so that and a little bit of distance, which helps. It helps me, especially in characters that are kind of like myself, you know, like Vicky in The Memory of Light, who suffers from depression. I think it was very helpful to me to have her be a young woman as opposed to a young boy or a young man, and also you know, to be able to write, to be able to have some distance from what, you know, what she was experiencing, you know, and to make that jump from like the mind of an old man into the mind of a young woman, you know, which is uh, I don't know whether that's that. I mean, that's probably, I think that's one of the most important things that as a writer that you need to be able to do is to, you know, you need to become other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. I think it's hard. And you know, over time, you know, I write picture book and middle grade and YA. So I write across age groups. And so I get to sort of test out my voice at four different age groups. But sometimes, you know, I've been at this now for a while, and and it takes me a little bit sometimes to get back into the voice of, and the sentiment, the heart of a teenager, of somebody who's 16 or 14 or whatever. It takes a little bit when I first step into that. And I often wonder, you know, like writing over time. You know, I watch we have, as you know, we have so many talented people, especially new Latinx authors coming to the table. They're just with these, you know, fabulous stories and fabulous voices. And so, you know, we have to keep our game up, Francisco, is what I'm saying. You and me, we got to keep our game up. But it's a tricky thing, right? Over time, staying relevant, keeping your ear sharp for today's young person, and staying true, I think, to the things that are like universal,
Right.
like
Yeah.
are eternally human.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think,
Those are my feelings on
yeah,
it. But it's
that balance. I mean, I have to be honest with you. I feel a lot. I feel like I'm not totally within the what is being written these days. You know, I feel a little bit like my books are out in the margin a little bit. Uh, you know, there are certain things that I can't do. You know, if I were to create a character who's on the phone all the time texting, and you know, those abbreviations, LOL, and you know, there's no way that so in a certain way, I have to work within my limitations, you know, and I have to kind of stay true. I have to stay true to myself, you know, to write books that I really care about, and characters that really touch me, you know, and I, you know, there's something to be said, you know, there's something to be said to kind of sticking to a tradition of a certain values. I think that I see you maintaining in your books, and you know, I don't know, how do you feel in terms of like where you are and how you fit into the writing that is taking place these days?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I mean, some days I feel completely confident in what I have to say about what I think about growing up, because I'm really saying it from the most heartfelt realities, right? Like what I really feel it was to grow up. And then the hard part is when I feel like I'm disconnected from very current things, you know, like very, you know, very teen things, or as you might say, technology, or, you know, what they're watching, or things like that, where I almost feel like I need a translator, right? Like I need a young person with, you know, help me to, like, what is that? It helps, I think, and you probably know this, not during COVID, but like you and I both, we run in circles with lots of amazing, young, fantastic authors, right? And we're always in conversation with them. And I learn a lot from my friends and from those friendships. But, you know, I think that you're right in that. I think the key is to to just like stay ruthlessly attached to the brutal truth of growing up and being a human being. That doesn't change. I mean, I think, the clothing changed, the expressions change. There are the shadings that you can add and that get updated, so to speak, rebooted. But I feel like the essence of like those key things, that moment when you have to step into the adult arena
Yeah.
unprepared, right? Or not ready. And there you are, that moment when, adults disappoint you deeply and you see their charade. Sexual awakenings, for awakenings with friends, all of those things. I think that's eternal. That's eternal. So I don't know. I just think like being brave.
Yeah.
That's what I don't want to lose. That's the edge I don't want to
Yeah.
lose. And I don't feel like you've lost that at all. Like in Disappeared and Illegal, like the characters to me felt very believable. And I just think that you tell the truth about hard things.
Yeah. Thank
How
you.
is that? How is it for you to write the hard things? I spend a lot of time writing hard realities too. It's exhausting, I find some days. And what do you make of all that?
Well, I think that the focus for me is always on the character, and I sort of it's the thread that keeps me that I hang on to throughout the story is always, how is this character growing, and what are the obstacles that keep this character from growing, and so the hard realities, it's almost like, where do you put the camera? Do you put the camera on all the horrible things that are happening in Hector's life, for example, or do you put the camera on Hector and what decisions he's going to make? What is the moral challenge that he's facing at the moment? And so, I think that the sad part about growing up is that you don't really grow up unless you encounter difficulties. That happens throughout your life. There's those are the adversaries that are put there by life or by God to make us grow into fuller, more wholesome, human beings. And so that's my focus. My focus is on the character, and I think that the reality, the harsh realities. I mean, Hector, for example, witnesses a kind of the brutal murder of his brother, and it's a moment, in the book. It's just a moment in the book. But what lasts is sort of that image, and sort of all of the emotions that happen, and so that's. And the decisions that Hector makes because of what he saw, so that I think that's how I get through those hard realities. And I think it's important for young people to read, to in a very respectful and serious and in not manipulative way, to read about some of the things that other youth encounter in their lives.
Yeah. I wrote down my favorite line. There were many in your book, but here was one that really resonated with me because I remember this. I remember this in my own life, and here it is. It takes courage to pursue happiness like our fathers did. I think it's Ozzy talking, his friend who is writing to him while he's at this reform school, like this notion that you can be surrounded with so many difficulties and you have to be really tough to choose to be happy and to make another end for yourself.
Yeah.
I remember that so clearly, and when I read that line, it stopped me in my tracks. It was really very beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you
It's
for
a notion
that
of I think I mean, Mercy kind of goes through that too in her book, is discovering what what real courage is all about, and
yeah.
We have these images of courage that are tainted with kind of machismo and masculinity, especially in the Latinx community, and
Oh,
Hector
yeah.
Hector feels like he needs to kind of respond to that. But slowly, I mean, the courage of accepting responsibility for other people, the courage of going to work every day, even in jobs that are not the greatest jobs.
Mhm.
That's the kind of courage that eventually, that as we grow, that we need to adopt.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you about that I admire so much in your books was that this voice that you are able to put in your characters, from Nora in Burn Baby Burn to Pity, and which are teenagers, and then you have Mercy Suarez, who's in the 7th grade, and I mean the voice is the pitch perfect for their age. The thoughts are perfect for their age, and their actions. And so I'm wondering whether this is just a natural ability on your part, or whether you will kind of work at it in terms of developing that. Because I mean, I would like you to divulge that secret for all of us once and for all.
It'll cost you, my friend. No, I honestly, that an interesting thing, because it's the one thing you hear editors say all the time, right? Voice. I'm looking for voice. I can't define it. I know it when I hear it, all of these kinds of things. My good friend Linda Sue Park, Linda Sue, I'm sure. She has almost a mathematical formula for how you achieve voice. It has to do with the sentence length and the age and things like that. I don't write in any way like that. I don't plan what I'm writing. I don't plot it except in the very crudest way, meaning I make a bell, like the worst thing that's going to happen, I write in the middle. And then I might write like 2 boxes of things that have to happen at the front end and things that have to happen at the back end. And that's it. And then I just go, I listen. So I think I spend a lot of time in memory. And I say this to people all the time because it's the ultimate like navel gazing, right? You're just staring at yourself. So I do an exercise called I Remember, and I do it fairly often. It's about 7 or 8 minutes long, and I will just pick an age, right? It'll be 7 or 8 or 10 or lo que sea, right? The age of the character that I'm sort of writing on. And I'll pick something random. Like, for example, one time I wrote about roller skates. I had roller skates when I was 8, and they were the metal kind that had the key that made them fatter or smaller. Do you remember these skates?
Yeah.
You might be of this age, or I might be older. I don't know. But I had those skates, right? And they had a leather strap and all of that. And they were kind of hard to get on and off, guys. And so if I had to pee, I lived in a building in Queens. I wouldn't take them off. I'd climb the stairs up and down in these roller skates with my mother hanging out the window. Muchacha, te vas a matar. Girl, you're gonna kill yourself. Like it was stuff like that. And I remembered, the sound of metal roller skates against the pavement. Cha, 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 cha. And so I spend 6 minutes just writing everything I could think of, remembering these roller skates. And then I remembered a kid who used to run alongside me. His name was Ray Biner, who lived downstairs from us. He was a kid, the youngest of 3 brothers, and how he always wanted to borrow my skates, right? And I always said no, right? And how I had to stop by grabbing onto a fence, all of those things. So here's what happens with that. Then I stop at 6 minutes, and then I ask myself, why do I remember? Why is that thing, of all the things that I could call upon in my mind, why did I pull that one? And it's almost always attached to a deeply felt feeling of that age. And at that age, I wanted more than anything to get off my block and get away a little from my mother and my sister and to just be powerful, right? And so when I come back and I'm writing somebody who's that age, I come back like I I'm there already. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's how I get there. And then sort of loosely throughout the writing, I find myself doing that exercise again and again, but then not so formally. Then in the writing, I'll give her like that bracelet that I wanted, or like all of those things, and
Yeah.
I knit it like that. What I'm not good at, I don't think yet, is like I've never written a novel with a male protagonist. And you've been brave enough to really center females as well in your work. And so how do you do that? Are you ever afraid that you're not getting that right, or?
No, I think that for some reason there's a big part of me that identifies with sort of what society calls the feminine qualities, that ascribes to and I think in some ways, I mean, I'm kind of more naturally, if you would say, more naturally kind of all those stereotypes that we say women are, like intuitive and more with their, more feeling and so forth. I mean, I think that those things kind of come kind of natural to me. But after a certain point in the writing, when I finish a draft, or I do depend on women, if I write about a young woman character to make sure to keep me honest, and so there's women in my life that I check with, my wife, my daughter, and there's obviously my editors. And sometimes I send it out to young people that I've met in talks, and I ask them, can you look at it and make sure that I'm still like using sort of regular vocabulary that people use these days, and if you catch groovy or something like that in there, make sure make sure that you
Me
set
on
me
the
straight.
head.
Yeah. But
Man, I want to talk to you about mentoring. You want to talk about mentoring? Because
Sure.
I know you've mentored, and I have mentored. I think we've met. Did you mentor a woman named Ari? By any
Yes.
chance, Ari Tyson?
She didn't need much mentoring because she was a
No,
great writer.
no, she didn't. She's now on to a big publishing career.
Yeah.
She worked at Hamlin. She was our program
Right.
coordinator for a while.
You
She's
invited me
wonderful.
to that talk at the graduation, and that's where I met Ari and other great authors. Thanks to you.
It's a wonderful program. I really enjoyed teaching there. But I was going to say, I teach there, so I do mentor students through that program. But I also just started mentoring this year through We Need Diverse Books.
Yeah.
And it's time. If you listed all the things Meg Medina has time to do, it would not make the cut, Francisco. And I'm sure it doesn't make your cut too. And yet I feel like it's for me, I feel like it's a really important thing to do. What are your thoughts on it? Why do you mentor? Why does it matter?
Well, I mean, I think I'm just incredibly, fortunate or blessed, depending on your perspective, to have books that have been published. I mean, there's a certain amount of, luck involved in this, believe it or not. There's a lot of great books that are written out there that don't get published, unfortunately, and so, I think that when you feel that so much is given to you, I mean, there's kind of an impulse to return some of that, and to pass it on to young people. And now that I'm that, but I also think that there's a mutuality in the mentoring, that I really do receive from them almost as much as I give to them in terms of inspiration, and not to mention the fact that I am in touch with seeing the world through their eyes, which is different than the way that I'm seeing it. And so, but I think it's kind of like a moral obligation to, when you get to be this old, and maybe there's something selfish in it. I'd like to pass on some of the things that I hold dear about writing. I think that writing is a vocation. It's not just about creating another book or publishing another book or getting rich. I think it's a way of life. And to the extent that I can help young people sort of push them in a direction of writing as a almost a spiritual discipline that is going to make you grow regardless of whether you're going to be famous or not. I mean, that seems like something that is worthwhile doing for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I feel like, and also I just feel like we're just at a critical place, right? Like we really need to up the numbers of inclusive books and diverse titles. And I feel better when I'm bringing more people to the table.
Yeah.
It's hard though. It's hard though, because we continue to make our own work, right? And we have to advocate for our own work as well. And, do that as well. I hope that when, you and I are both too tired, right? That some of the people that we've mentored, that some of these examples linger. You know what I'm saying? That they
Yeah.
will also become part of the scaffolding for the next ones. Because I feel like I'm standing on lots of shoulders
Sure.
of people who were doing the hard work, before you and I got here. And now, we did some heavy lifting for a while and are doing it now. And I hope it, that it just keeps growing.
Yeah.
But I feel the same way about the mentoring. I really do. I really do love it. So I don't want to give away the ending, which was very clever. I thought, because I was really worried, Francisco, about what choice he was going to make. But what's next after this book for you? Are you working on something else as well?
Yeah, I mean, I have one. I think I have one more book that I'm working on now. That we're going working with my editor on, and it's I mean, I really love this. I love all my books, but I love this book. It'll be my 10th novel. I'm not really sure, what's going to happen after that. I'm kind of hoping that I don't get this kind of urge to write something else right away. That I don't have to respond to that urge. But this is a book that is I'm gonna try to make it my first really kind of love story, which I've never quite like stood out on a limb and try to write that. They're little kind of, even in Hector, he has his beautiful friend Ozzy, and it's a wonderful, it's a wonderful friendship with tinges of romance, but I've never really kind of stepped on the limb and tried, like a real, like a first love story. And so
why not? Why haven't you?
I there's I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I can find the right words to describe, like, how do you describe a kiss, like a first kiss in a way that hasn't been described before, in a way that doesn't make reference to your knees trembling or your, or
Right.
the earth moved. I kissed her,
Yeah.
the earth moved, kind of. So
no moving earth, people.
I'll give it a shot. I don't know. We'll see what happens. How about you? What are your plans?
My plans. So as we speak, I spent all day writing the last of the Mercy books. So it will be, the first one was 6th grade. Mercy Suarez Quintan's, the one that's out right now, is 7th grade. And then there will be the final one, which is Mercy's 8th grade year. And it's just bringing a trilogy that was never meant to be a trilogy in for a good landing, right?
Yeah.
And wrapping up all the things that I want to wrap up for her, and leaving her in a good position with the reader, like for what's going to happen to Mercy. So that's kind of tricky. And then I have a picture book that is under contract in another middle grade. So I have no further details on those because they're just cooking in my brain right now. But my biggest priority is by June 15th, having this manuscript to my editor. And you know how that is, right? I'm at that place where I'm wearing stretchy pants most of the day and barely combing my hair and, forgetting to eat and all of those things. But that's, as you said, right, this is the writing life, right? It has, it's like I don't know, I feel like I work hard, and I feel like I don't work a single day. It's both of those things at the same time.
And how do you feel about Mercy now? Does she still feel fresh to you? Like, does she still excite you as something that you want to, somebody who you want to get to know more?
Yeah, I think because of the age that I'm writing her in, right? Middle school. Do you remember yourself in 6th grade and then in 8th grade?
Yeah.
Like all the things that happen, like how different you are from each of those grades. So there was enough change there that I could really explore the big things that happen to a young woman in middle school. So yeah, it does feel fresh. The hard part of those books is that it's a very big cast. And so to develop all those characters in a memorable way and keep all those plates spinning, right, without confusing the reader and like all of those things. So it just takes a lot of rereading and making sure that that I've got things going, listening for comedy, listening for poignant moments. Like it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I have loved writing them. And then, but I do think that when I finish the 3rd novel, I'll be done. You know, I will be able to walk away from them and just feel really, really good about where I left them. And here's our friend Ellie, because I know I was
Hello.
looking at the clock going, they're going to get the hook at any minute and yank us off. Hey, Ellie.
Hello.
We
Thank
got
you
carried
both.
away.
As you should. This was an awesome conversation. I'm just like so excited to reread all of your books now with everything you've said in mind. We do have a couple questions from me and from the audience. One is, what messages do you hope readers come away with or are thinking about after reading your work, and what kind of conversations do you hope your work facilitates?
Yeah, I mean, I would love for Hector to become a real character in the minds of a young reader, and when it becomes a real character, maybe they'll start like thinking about the things that Hector did and the choices that he made. Maybe remembering, when they get angry, something that triggers, a memory of Hector, and that's the way I think that books really work. Is not so much a moral message that you get out of it, rather living with a character, and so, I mean, the conversation that I hope triggers is, would be sort of like, I mean, what do you do when with your anger and your hatred, because you can't really just all of a sudden say, I want to stop hating. There needs to be like a mental process, to unhook yourself from that almost addictive, emotion, which is really all kind of too prevalent these days. And so I think that's sort of to look at the book and to find, okay, how did Hector, what were the ways that Hector slowly, maybe not totally got himself off the hook, but enough to keep on living.
Absolutely.
I'm
What
gonna
about you?
upvote that.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I don't really think about the message of the book itself. I like to think of my readers as constantly engaging with what's going on the page, asking themselves, how am I like her? How am I different? What would I do in this situation? What do I think she should do? Why is this a bad idea? Et cetera, et cetera. Like I feel like it's in those quiet moments that kids are figuring out, the characters. They're also figuring out what they think of themselves. So that's really what I want. And I also like to leave young readers with a sense of forward motion and hope, right? No matter how dark the novel has been that I've written in terms of the difficulties the character's facing, there is a way forward. There is a way, as your character said, it takes courage to pursue happiness. There is a way forward.
Absolutely. Thank you both for those answers. I'm Yeah, they really resonate. Absolutely. Another question is from Rachel Marlena Stevens. Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for taking the time to share your stories and insight. Francisco, I thought it was especially brave to include Hector's discovery and reaction to Joey's therapy/psych files. Was there anything in particular that led you to this, as opposed to Hector experiencing that internal conflict about his feelings toward Joey in a different way? Did you feel it was important to include this type of trauma in the book because of its potential audience and the trauma experienced by so many young adults in these types of facilities?
Yeah, I think it was with that. I think it was a situation of Joey is also a real character. I mean, he's not, the focus is not on him as much, but there is a growth of Joey that also, I mean, there's a transformation of Joey that also takes place. And I thought it was important, for one of the ways that we get unhooked from hate is when we get to know the person that we're hating, and in a beyond what we're projecting them to be. We suddenly discover that this is not just an evil person, but he had a past and a mother and a father who was abusive and so forth. And so the main, I think that the main purpose of including that Joey's trauma, mental trauma, was for the recognition of his humanity by Hector, and also for the reader to kind of see that there's a glimmer of goodness, and even in Joey, as well. And as always, and also to kind of point out that for a lot of delinquency is obviously based on the trauma that occurs in the family, as the young men are growing up. And so it's kind of good to keep that in mind, that we see the evil act, but it's good for us to kind of understand that there some of the causes behind that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that answer. It's such a powerful book. Thank you so much for writing it. Our next question for Francisco and Meg both is the primary motivation of your work to help young adults, young adolescents, mature confidently, interpret and make sense of their world's challenges, need for resilience, what to avoid, what to trust, including gut instincts, and not just entertain, although surely a necessity to capture their interest.
You want to take that?
So, yeah. So the question is, which of those? Yes, it is. I would say I do love that books entertain. I think books have a really important role in helping us escape and entertain. They have a really important role in helping us develop vocabulary and thinking skills and all of those sort of practical daily kinds of things. But I think the way that books have most helped and shaped me as a person is in the window it's given me into being a human, right? And I read kind of widely across cultures, across styles, and so on, and it's that feeling when I step away that I have learned something new about the characters, and I've had to really rethink something about myself. And I am very excited when I think that maybe my books can do that for young people too, or that it could turn them into people who will read over the course of their lives, which I think is really healthy and soul-saving.
Yeah, I don't think you need to intend for the book to help people in order for that to happen. I think that's always it's always there, but it's probably more helpful for me as an author to kind of focus on remaining true to myself, and also keep making sure that the book is interesting to a reader. How do I keep his attention for 300 or her attention for 300 pages? So that's the craft element, but then there's the kind of the inner connection to me to make sure that and then I think that if you're honest and you're writing a book that's really that's answering some of your own kind of hard questions, that I think that the reader is going to read that, it's going to recognize that, and it's going to trust you, and it will be, like Meg says, will be will learn, become more human because of that.
Can I just add this, that when I'm rereading, like after I've finished a draft or second draft, I'm getting ready to send it to my editor. The one way that I know that I'm there, right, I'm sort of in the zone, is that I forget that I wrote it as I'm reading it. I don't know if you have that experience. Like if I can read it and I get pulled into the story without thinking that I'm, that I'm pulling the string, then I'm okay. But the moment I'm really aware that I'm there and I'm still saying, change, then I know, wait, that's not ready yet. Weird.
Yeah,
Do
that's
you
a
do
beautiful,
that, Francisco?
it's a really beautiful feeling, man, when you just disappear as an author and you become a reader, and I mean, I still go back to some passages from Marcelo for inspiration, and I'm amazed at the person who wrote that. I mean, God damn, that guy was
Bravo,
smart.
bravo. I get it. I totally get it. It's true. Like, wow. I think Maya Angelou said that she used to reread her work when she faced self-doubt, that she would reread her work to remind herself that she could do it, that she was capable of this. And if she was capable of this, she was capable of facing the manuscript that she was struggling with.
Yeah. I am very much not a writer, but I do the same thing to get myself through pandemic book selling every day. Like, oh, you got through that guy who looked at you murderously when you asked him to put on a mask. You can do it again.
You see, it's universal.
Exactly. Speaking of craft, our last question, or what might be our last question, also has to do with craft. It's from Alessandra Narvaez Varela, who starts with saying, "Thank you, Francisco. You're a wonderful mentor who is generous and kind. Saludos desde El Paso y Ciudad Juarez. Can you talk to us about your writing process? For example, how did you start on the hook? How did it come to you? And how did it evolve to its last published draft? Do you have a specific routine, or does it change book to book and story to story?"
No, I think that, it began sort of with a feeling way back then, and 15 years ago, that although that was the best book that I have written, I mean, that the story had not reached its full potential, and I don't really have that feeling with many books, but there was this feeling with this one that there was just, like I said, I really wasn't able to touch the young readers that I wanted to, the kind of young readers that I wanted to touch. So over time, it didn't happen overnight, but over time, thanks to like various drafts with Cheryl Klein, and work trying to get it right and not quite getting there, and starting over again, eventually after writing other books, and learning how to do other things, it came together, so basically, I mean, my writing process is just really to say to myself that I'm going to be sitting down in front of a laptop or a notebook for 2 hours, and and whatever happens. I'm going to be dedicating kind of a mental space to the story, whether it be doodling on a piece of paper or writing notes or actually writing a paragraph, I'm very much aware that at this point that a lot of what happens is almost, it's almost like a gift, it just comes, and some of the best thing that I can do is just wait and put myself in a position to receive, new ideas and new images. But the most important thing for a writer, I think, is just the sense that little by little, you just a page a day, or it's just a sense that it's going to be a while, and it's really, if you incorporate the sense of writing as your way of life, then it really, you write with a sense of leisure and a sense of purpose. How about you, Meg? What is your writing process?
I mean, I feel the same way. I feel like the thing that resonated with me of what you just said was sometimes the wisest thing to do is wait. And I always tell my students that it's like making a cup of tea. So you boil the water and you throw the tea bag in, but you need to let it steep, right? It has to become tea. It doesn't just instantly happen. So the notion of just letting it steep for a while, and also which is very true in my work, my first idea is never my best idea, almost never. So I put down my first sort of half-baked idea, and then as I circle back and so on, it gets refined and improved, moved, morphed, all those kinds of things. But yeah, it's just it's a slow process, and I love that about it. It's a slow reveal.
Sounds really magical, honestly, and like a very frustrating magic, but still.
Yeah,
And you have a book.
that's true.
That's so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. That's all the time we have for questions. Thank you again thank you to the audience, of course, for submitting all your great questions and contributions. And thank you, Francisco and Meg, for joining us this evening and sharing your words and insights. It has been such an honor to host you and talk to you today. Thank you to our viewers for joining us for this amazing conversation. And don't forget, you can still click the link in the chat box to get your copies of our guests' books today. We do have signed book plates while supplies last, so get on it fast. To find out about more events, check out our website for updated listings, and you can follow our Children and Teens Department on social media. The handle is posted in the chat as well. And you can watch our past events on our Politics and Prose YouTube channel. Thank you again, everyone. Keep reading widely and expanding your world. Stay safe. And Francisco and Meg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
Have a
Meg.
wonderful day.
It's been such a pleasure. I miss you, Francisco. Let's see each other soon.
Hasta pronto.
Cariños.
Adiós.
Hasta pronto. Adiós todos.